The night my brother showed up at my flower shop, I had just finished the last arrangement of the day, white ranunculus and dried Pampas grass, the kind of thing brides pay $400 for without blinking. My hands smelled like eucalyptus, my feet hurt. And for the first time in 3 years, I actually felt like I was going to be okay. Then the bell above the door rang. I didn't look up right away. We were technically closed, but I'd left the door unlocked because my last delivery driver was still out. So I called toward the door. "We're closed for the evening," and kept wrapping the stems in brown craft paper. No answer. I looked up. My brother was standing in the entrance of my shop, and behind him, half a step back like she always positioned herself, my mother. I want to tell you that I handled it gracefully. In that first second, I didn't. My hands stopped moving. The craft paper crinkled and went still. I just stared at them the way you stare at something your brain refuses to process, like seeing a car accident happen in slow motion and not being able to look away. 3 years. Not a single text. Not a call on my birthday. Not a card at Christmas. Not even a like on social media. 3 years where I had to figure out that I was entirely, completely, and purposefully erased from my own family, and I had to figure that out alone. And now they were standing in my shop, looking around at the refrigerated cases, and the hanging dried florals, and the little chalkboard sign I'd hand-lettered myself, and my mother said, "This is nice, you've done well for yourself." Like we'd seen each other last Tuesday. Let me go back, because you need to understand what happened before that night to understand why what came after mattered so much. 3 years earlier, I had just gotten out of a relationship that took more from me than I want to admit. I was 27, living in a rented room in a house with 2 other girls, working at a floral wholesale company during the day, and doing weekend arrangements out of my car on nights and weekends. I had a business plan. I had a savings account I'd been feeding for 2 years. I had a name picked out. I'd even trademarked it. What I didn't have was enough capital to sign a commercial lease. My mother knew this. My brother knew this. We were close then, or I thought we were. Sunday dinners. Group texts. My mother called me every few days just to talk. My brother and I had the kind of relationship where we could sit in the same room and not say anything, and it still felt comfortable. So when my brother came to me and said he was starting a landscaping business and needed a cosigner on a small business loan, I said yes. He was my brother. He had a plan. I read the paperwork, or I thought I read the paperwork. I signed where he pointed. What I didn't know, because I trusted him, was that the loan wasn't small. It was $41,000. And buried in the documents, in language I was 27 years old and did not fully understand, was a clause that made me not the cosigner but the primary borrower. My name, my credit, my liability. He defaulted in 11 months. I found out the way you find out about most financial disasters. A letter in the mail from a collections agency asking me to contact them about a seriously delinquent account in my name. I called my brother in a panic. He didn't answer. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, and I could tell from her voice that she already knew. It was a rough time for him, she said. He needed help. He put the loan in my name, I said. Mom, it's in my name. You signed it. That was the moment. That 3-word sentence. You signed it. Not "I'm sorry." Not "we'll figure this out." Not "that wasn't okay." Just "you signed it." As if I had done something to myself. I spent the next 4 months negotiating with the lender, protecting my credit score, and paying down enough of the debt to avoid a judgment against me. It cost me $11,000. $11,000 I had saved to open my shop. I tried to talk to my family about it twice after that. The first time, my brother hung up. The second time, my mother told me I was making things harder than they needed to be, and that maybe I should see someone about my anger. After that, I stopped calling. They stopped calling too. Months went by, then a year, then 2. I moved to a different part of the city, rebuilt my savings from scratch, found a small commercial space in a neighborhood that was just starting to come up, the kind of street where a new coffee shop had just opened, and a vintage furniture place had moved in 2 doors down. I signed my lease on a Thursday morning. I ugly cried in the parking lot after. The shop took everything I had, my savings, my evenings, my weekends, a personal loan from a credit union that I paid back ahead of schedule because paying it back felt like proof I could do this. I hired one part-time employee, a 22-year-old named, well, I called her Rue, which was her actual nickname and she preferred it, who had a gift for color and an even better gift for talking to nervous brides. By year 2, we were fully booked 3 months out for weddings. By year 3, we had a wholesale account with 2 local event venues and a standing weekly order from a hotel lobby downtown. I was not rich. I was not even comfortable. Not really, not yet. But I was building something real and it was mine and nobody had their name on it but me. So when my brother and my mother walked into my shop that Tuesday evening in late October, I understood something immediately. They hadn't come to apologize. Nobody who comes to apologize stands in a doorway with their arms crossed. "Can I help you?" I said. I don't know why I said it that way. Maybe because there were still 2 customers browsing in the back of the shop, and I didn't want a scene. Maybe because saying it like they were strangers was the only way I could keep my voice steady. My mother looked at me like I'd said something strange. "We need to talk to you." "We're closing in about 10 minutes, I said. "Let me take care of my customers." I spent those 10 minutes breathing, moving slowly, wrapping a small succulent arrangement for the woman by the window, processing her card, thanking her and meaning it. Watching Rue say goodnight and head out the back, locking the rear entrance, turning the sign in the front window to closed. By the time I walked back to where my brother and mother were standing near the front counter, I was ready. Or ready enough. My brother looked tired. He'd put on weight since I'd last seen him, and there was something tinged around his eyes that I didn't remember being there before. My mother looked the same as always, composed, like she'd rehearsed this, like she'd prepared for every version of how I might react. "You look good," my brother said. I didn't say anything. He glanced around the shop again. "Place looks great. You've really built something here." "Thank you," I said. "Why are you here?" My mother was the one who answered. She reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope and set it on the counter between us. "Your brother's gotten into some financial trouble. We need your help." I didn't touch the envelope. "What kind of trouble?" "He took out a loan 2 years ago to keep his business going after things got difficult. He's been managing, but the investors are pushing now, and the terms it's complicated. He needs someone to help bridge the gap." I looked at my brother. "What kind of gap?" He didn't look at me. He looked at the envelope. 38,000. The number landed in my chest like something dropped from a height. "And you came to me," I said. It wasn't a question. "You're doing well," my mother said, and the way she said it made it sound logical. Like the fact that I had built something from nothing meant I owed it to the people who had helped destroy my first attempt. "We're family. This is what family does." I picked up the envelope. I opened it. Inside were documents, loan statements, a repayment schedule, something that looked like a demand letter from a private investor group. I read slowly. My brother shifted his weight from foot to foot. Then I found the page that made my stomach go cold. At the bottom of the repayment terms, there was a clause. The investors had agreed to subordinate their claim if a family member with verifiable assets co-signed a new repayment agreement. The verifiable asset they had in mind, and someone had filled this in already, in pen, on a line that had my name printed beside it, was my shop, my lease, my equipment, my wholesale contracts, my client list. They wanted me to put my business up as collateral. I set the envelope back down on the counter. "No," I said. My brother's jaw tightened. "Nora, no." My mother's voice went quiet in the way it always did when she was about to say something she considered final. "Your brother is going to lose everything if you don't help him. His apartment, his truck, everything he's worked for." "I know what it feels like to lose what you've worked for," I said. "I learned that 3 years ago." Silence. My brother said, "That was different, was it?" He looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time since he'd walked in, and I saw it. Not remorse exactly, but something close to it. The acknowledgement that he knew, that he'd always known, and that he was still standing here asking. My mother reached into her bag again. She set a single piece of paper on top of the envelope. It was a letter addressed to my landlord. His name and the property management company's address were already filled in. "If you won't help voluntarily," she said, "we'll need to inform your landlord that there are unresolved financial claims associated with this address." I stared at the letter. "That's not true," I said. "There are no claims on this address. There are documents with your signature on a business loan that defaulted," she said. "That's a matter of public record. Any reasonable landlord would want to know if their tenant has unresolved." "That loan is resolved," I said. "I paid it. I paid $11,000 of my savings to clean up what he did, and I have documentation of every payment." My mother didn't blink. "Then you have nothing to worry about." But we both knew that wasn't the point. The point was the letter. The point was the threat. A letter like that, even if it led nowhere, even if my landlord ignored it, would create doubt, would create a conversation I'd have, a situation I'd have to manage, a shadow over the business I had spent 3 years building in the dark. My hands were very still on the counter. I had learned, somewhere in the past 3 years, how to be still when I wanted most to move. I need you to leave, I said. My brother looked up. Nora, I need you to leave my shop right now. Both of you. We're not finished. Yes, I said. You are. What my mother didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I had spent the previous morning at a meeting. Not a personal meeting, a financial one. 6 weeks earlier, I'd gotten a call from a collections firm. Not about my debt, I had none. About my brother's. The original investor group that had funded his landscaping company had sold their debt portfolio to a third-party firm, and that firm had been doing due diligence. Calling contacts, verifying assets, trying to figure out what was recoverable. They called me because my name was still in the file. As the original cosigner from the first loan, years ago, my contact information was attached. I asked them to send me everything they had. I spent 2 weeks reading it. I had a friend who was a paralegal review the documents with me. What I found was this. The current loan, the $38,000 my brother now owed, had been issued by a small private investor group, the same people named in the documents my mother had put on my counter. And that group had recently sold their note, at a discount, to the same collections firm that had called me. The firm was willing to settle the note for 62 cents on the dollar. $23,560. I had that. I had just barely that, sitting in a reserve account I'd been building for shop expansion. I bought the note on a Monday morning. I signed the assignment paperwork, had it notarized, and left with a certified copy in a folder in my bag, which was still in my bag, sitting on the shelf under the counter, when my mother set that letter on the counter and told me I had nothing to worry about. I reached under the counter. I picked up the folder. I set it between us next to the envelope. My mother looked at it. What is that? Open it, I said. My brother reached for it before she did. His hands were less steady than hers. He unfolded the top document and I watched his face as he read. The color left his skin in a way I won't forget. This is, he started. An assignment of debt, I said. Your loan was sold. I purchased it Monday morning, which means the $38,000 you owe is no longer owed to outside investors, I paused. It's owed to me. My mother's composure, the one she'd worn like a coat since she'd walked in, slipped. Just slightly, just enough. That's not, she started. Legal? It's completely legal. I have the notarized assignment, the transfer of title, and a record of the wire transfer. My attorney has copies. I didn't have an attorney yet. I planned to have one by the end of the week, which technically made the statement true in intent, if not in exact present tense. The paralegal friend who'd helped me review the documents had already referred me to someone she trusted. My brother set the folder down on the counter. He looked like he was doing math in his head and not liking the answers. Now, I said, let's talk about the letter you were going to send my landlord. Neither of them spoke. I want it, I said, and I want any copies, and I want to be very clear about something. I kept my voice even, the way I'd learned to keep it even. What you just described doing, sending a letter to my landlord making false financial claims about this property to pressure me into giving you money or co-signing a debt, that has a name. You can look it up. My attorney will certainly know it. My mother said slowly. We weren't going to actually send it, then you'll have no problem handing it to me. She picked up the letter. She held it for a moment. Then she set it on the counter and slid it toward me. I folded it and put it in my folder next to the assignment paperwork. I want you both to leave, I said. And I want you to understand something before you do. I'm not your emergency fund. I'm not a resource. I'm not someone you get to show up for when you need something after 3 years of silence. I looked at my brother. I love you. I think some part of me always will. But what you did to me, the loan, the silence, letting Mom threaten me in my own shop, that's not something I can set aside because you're in trouble. My brother said very quietly, I know. It was the first honest thing he'd said since he'd walked in. Then you know why I'm asking you to leave. He nodded. He picked up the envelope, the one they'd brought, and he walked to the door. He didn't look back. My mother stayed one moment longer. She looked around my shop the way she had when she'd first walked in, but something in her expression was different now. Less appraising. Something I couldn't quite name. You really have done well, she said. I know, I said. She left. I stood at the counter for a long time after the bell above the door went quiet. The shop was still, just the hum of the refrigerated cases, the faint smell of eucalyptus, and something sweet from the dried florals near the window. I picked up my phone. I called the paralegal who'd helped me review the documents and left her a message asking for the attorney's contact information as soon as possible. Then I texted Rue and told her everything had gone fine and she didn't need to worry. Then I sat down on the stool behind the counter, in my shop, in the business I had built from $11,000 of loss and 3 years of silence, and I let myself feel it. Not triumph exactly, something quieter than that. Something that felt less like winning and more like finally, after a very long time, being able to breathe all the way in. The following week, I sent my brother a formal repayment notice through the collections firm, now acting on my behalf. The terms were fair, more fair than the original investors had been. Monthly payments, reasonable interest, a structured timeline. He had 30 days to respond. He responded in 12. I don't know what happens after this. I don't know if my brother and I ever find our way back to something that looks like family. I don't know if my mother ever says the words I spent 3 years wanting to hear. What I know is that I stopped waiting for those things to happen before I let myself move forward. I built something they tried to take from me, and then they came back to take the thing I built next, and I was ready. That's enough. For now, that's enough.